Okay. I'm always excited when the technology works.
It's always a
Alex,
good
it's
day.
been like 2 years of your whole world has been, I guess, put onto online. So you probably do the online prayer every day, I bet.
Yeah, it was. Excuse me. It was quite a shift, and there was a lot of scramble on what's the right platform to use for, privacy and Health Information Act and all those sorts of things. So it was interesting to sort of see and navigate what other practitioners were using in their world and whatnot, and you know it. And then there's I saw a drop off of people wanting to engage, saying no, I'll wait till in person comes back, and then I think things escalated. It was like, no, I can't wait, because
Yeah.
you remember way back, it was like, oh yeah, it'll be a month, we'll be home, and then
Yeah.
we'll be back out
Couple
in the world.
weeks.
Yeah,
Everything is just a couple of weeks. Yeah.
yeah.
I know. But this is our stalling portion. You have coffee? Are you a coffee drinker or a tea drinker?
Coffee. Usually I am. I did not have one as of yet. I was at the gym early at 6 a.m. So raced home and
You're a
breakfast and
trooper.
everything. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Look at you being healthy, doing those things we think about. I like that. I mean, it was Chinese New Year yesterday, so the Lunar New Year just started. So if people haven't, got up to speed with their resolutions yet, it's really only day one today.
yeah. It was like
January
a
is like
soft
practice.
soft launch last time.
Yeah, I like that soft launch. It's so good. Well, as people join Coffee Club this morning, make sure you say hello in the comments. Let us know you're here. We're going to get started with our conversation in a moment, but we want to got to give everybody time to get their coffees. Kevin, you're here. Good morning. Helen, good morning.
Good morning.
They start popping in like groundhogs. It's Groundhog Day today.
That it is. Yep.
You heard? I heard what Wyerton Willie said that we are going to have an early spring. Puxatawny Phil said we have 6 more weeks of winter, but he's in the States. So does he really even matter?
Yeah. Isn't there winter kind of every month in Alberta? Don't we kind of have those days always?
Yeah. And then there's a Pakisco Pete that's local to the area that we live in, but I haven't heard from him yet this morning. So I don't know. I don't know what's happening in our neck of the woods. Good morning, Kelly. So I don't know. On a day where it's minus 30, I hope that they say that it's going to be an early spring.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a little shocking this morning when I checked the weather.
Good morning, Sandy. Well, I didn't really check. I'm super great. I'm going to have a gratitude moment and then we'll get started. But I'm super grateful I have this little garage in this place that I live. And so you kind of don't really know the weather until you drive around and you get outside. And so, I mean, it looks just like a regular. And so then halfway to school, I looked at the temperature gauge on my vehicle and I looked at my son. I'm like, holy crap, it's minus 30.
Yeah.
Did you get boots? We should maybe start checking the weather before we leave the house.
Yeah.
That's all good. Well, we're going to get going and have some fun. Everybody, as you jump on, please say good morning. Welcome to Virtual Coffee Club. Today, I'm super excited to have Alex Cameron joining us. Alex and I met virtually, just like most things anymore, a few weeks ago when we did an interview for the High River District Healthcare Foundation. And Alex, I just loved the way our conversation went and loved the way that you described things when we had a really great talk about mental health. And so I wanted to invite you to come and chit chat with this group. And so Coffee Club, to give you some background, Alex, we started this at the beginning of COVID.
Oh, wow.
We used to go every single day just so that everybody had somewhere to come and connect in and so they felt like they were having coffee with somebody. And I babbled every day for a really long time. And now we're down to 3 days a week for my mental health, but we still like to connect in. And this group checks in from all over the world. So we're really excited to have
that's great.
People who come in and have coffee. And we've kind of become this little connection group to make sure everybody's doing okay. So you get to
fantastic.
equip this group with some tools, and I'm excited about that today.
Well, and just like on that note, I mean, just the tool of having community is so key in of itself, and having that connection and people with shared experiences, that's fantastic. So really cool that everybody's still able to engage, and it's continuing as well.
Yeah, we're going to keep going till nobody shows up. So every day I come on that I'm like, well, they'll show up or they won't. I'll talk to myself or I won't. And it
Fair
seems
enough.
like somebody always needs a hello. So that I can do. That I can do. Well, Alex, everyone, just to give you a little background on who he is, works with Alberta Health Services with Rural Addictions and Mental Health South. He also has his own private practice and is helping people through probably more, well, I can't remember the word you used last time, but probably more significant mental health challenges, but you've just such great insight on those of us who need sort of some everyday help. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
it does. Yeah, I think the Alberta Health Services clinics that I am the supervisor at, like we see moderate to severe mental health. So that's kind of like usually when things are a bit escalated, when things are maybe like hitting a wall, people are really struggling. In my own private practice, definitely seeing, I don't want to say less severe because I don't think it should be like on a hierarchy,
Yeah.
but people that are more often able to function and get through, but needs that support. And it looks very different. The clients that I would see at the clinic are different than the clients that I would see sort of in private practice. And I think that's just the nature of the world and that I work in, where people who have benefits, when they're like, okay, I've got some benefits, I'm going to engage, I'm going to check in with somebody and talk about this, so maybe a bit more proactive, versus the health authority. It's more, hey, I'm really hitting the wall, my doctor's referred me to call, or different things like that. So there definitely is a continuum there.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start off with a question I didn't ask you before we went on that just came to me now, and then we'll go into the easier stuff, I promise. But
Sure.
I was curious because we've had the last 2 years being more challenging, I think, than we've ever had on mental health in our lives. Like, I think we can be really honest that conversation is happening sort of in the background in our world, but I would love it to be more forefront. But are you finding that people, like, that there has been an increase in people wanting to talk to somebody? Have you seen sort of some of that change in the last 2 years from a pre-COVID standpoint?
I would say yes. I think I'm seeing, and anecdotally, more people that maybe traditionally would not have reached out that are starting to reach out. I think the people that already were sort of like engaged in services or engaged in that work, like continued it. But there were also barriers as well. So, because I was in Toronto when the pandemic started, and of course, housing, as we all know, is super expensive out there and whatnot. So a lot of people live with partners and things. So like I saw people are saying, I want to continue, I want to engage, but I've got things that I want to talk about in my home life, but I'm in a 600 square foot condo and I don't have the space.
Right.
So I think you saw more people reach out, but also some people retreat and retract because they didn't have the opportunity to see people in person as well. So I think it's affected everybody so differently. But on the whole, I would say more people are starting to recognize that, wow, I'm not doing as well as I thought I was. And what are my options and where can I start to connect and get some support?
Well, and the hard thing is that it's probably an interesting one to have analytics for, because is there an increase because of what we've had with the last 2 years, or is there also an increase because we're talking about mental health a lot more and we're trying to normalize and destigmatize the need to seek help in a different fashion?
I think all of the above. I think
Yeah.
the other one that has contributed to us seeing more people is the inclusion of the virtual services.
Mm-hmm.
So we see at our clinics less no-shows, and we're seeing people from a broader range. So people that may not have arrived prior are saying, hey, yeah, you know what? Like, I don't have the 45 minutes to drive to the office there and back, but what I do have is the hour that I can carve out of my day to get online or to get on the phone.
Yeah. Which is kind of a nice twist for it. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
when we can seek out the good in the challenged. I like that there is that option for people, and more likely they would jump on and do that. That
Yeah,
makes me happy.
absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I thought today we could talk a little bit about, I think we have lots of conversations around mental health. We talked about this before, but sort of identifying mental wellness versus mental illness, and how do we know the difference of that? How do we know where we're sitting on that, if it's a spectrum or what that looks like? Kind of what's the
Mhm.
difference between the two?
Yeah. So again, when I think of mental health, I think that's the entire continuum. Like my mental health is somewhere on this continuum from mentally well, or to mentally ill. And the mental illness, like those disorders that we hear about, and whatnot, from what we call the DSM, and that's sort of like the encyclopedia, so to speak, of the different disorders that we identify. They all have different symptoms and criteria that we have to meet to be diagnosed with, generalized anxiety disorder or major depressive disorder and whatnot. And that doesn't mean that we're not struggling with some of those feelings. So a lot of times in my work, I'll say to my clients, whether you walk through with a diagnosis or you tell me what symptoms you're experiencing, I'm going to work with you the same, because how you experience your life is really what matters. So I think when we talk about mental illness, that's usually it's diagnosed by a doctor or a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Those are the people that can kind of go in and say, let's go through this, do the testing and whatnot. And that can be very helpful for some people, especially if it's something where it maybe opens up more funding or more options like schizophrenia or something like that, and different medications and things that may be helpful. But I think sometimes for some others, we can say like, well, I think I have OCD, or I think I have anxiety, and so I need to have this diagnosis. But we often will ask, to what end? Like, how does the diagnosis help you, versus saying, you know what, sometimes I'm anxious in the morning. And so I think when our mental health or our mental wellness or mental illness, like when those things start to make choices for us, that's when we want to address it. So as an example, like anxiety is a very normal human experience. So it's what keeps me from stepping into oncoming traffic and getting flattened by a bus. Because like, oh, there's a car coming. I should probably, check in with myself and feel that maybe this isn't the safest choice to make the step out into the street right now. But when it's like, I want to go to work, but I'm too anxious and I can't get out of bed, then it's maybe moving more toward a mental illness or a disorder. And maybe that's when we want to sort of reach out and say to a doctor or a service and say, hey, I'm experiencing some things. I need some support. And sometimes that may result in being diagnosed with a mental illness, and sometimes it won't. But I think anytime you take a step toward your mental wellness, you're helping yourself. So I'm always loath when clients say like, well, can you tell me can you diagnose me? I'm like, I'm not sure if that's how helpful that is. And why do you want to know? Because I've also met people say they really identify with that illness. So it's like, hi, I'm major depressive disorder. Sort of like, well, you're not, you're David. And these are the things that you're experiencing, and you're still a whole human that just has some of these struggles, and let's help you through that. So it really is a continuum, and everybody falls somewhere on it. Even myself, I move on it daily, yet let alone like different points in my day as well.
Yeah. Well, I definitely noticed, like for me, last week was a low week. And so I experienced some interesting challenges that I shared with our coffee club last week, where even to the point where one day I had panic attacks for the first time ever in my life. And it was an absolutely terrifying feeling going through that. I'm one of those people that I love to like analytically break down all the things, like jump out of myself and look back. That's not possible for all people, but it was interesting. And I had someone say, well, also like, not only did you experience something that caused you great grief this week, Jody, but don't forget, we have some compounded emotions from the last couple of years that maybe made that feel more amplified for you. And I thought, I thought how many other people are experiencing these fluctuations in emotions that we maybe didn't ever have before.
Absolutely. And when I think about like the grief and loss collectively, that communities, the world that we're going through, the loss of living life the way we used to, the loss of connection with friends, and there's the very significant loss maybe of loved ones that have passed or succumbed to some of the things that have been going on in this world. And some people haven't been able to have funeral services for loved ones and whatnot. So all of those things start to compound, and it really is looking at like, wow, I've lost a lot. I need to feel through that and not just say ignore it, because when we ignore, things fester. And I often say to people, if we don't deal with this, it's going to be the sliver in your toe that turns into gangrene and we lose the leg. So how do we address it as early as possible and just notice, hey, something's not quite right here. It doesn't feel, completely great for me. Let me lean into this. Let me get curious about it and connect with somebody and chat about it.
And is that really the first step piece? Like when you say that, like, okay, if we feel like we have that little bit of a sliver, like what next?
Yeah. It's about maybe just feeling that, identifying, okay, what is this feeling like? What's different for me? And what do I think needs to be different for me to move forward? Because one of the things, the big pieces that sometimes surprises clients when they go to therapy is that it is usually very goal directed by the client. So it is somebody saying, I'm coming for help. I'm coming for assistance. And people say, what do you hope to get from here? What are your goals? And people say, well, I don't know. If I knew that, I wouldn't be here. Well, no, only you can know what you want to be different. The how, that's where our expertise comes in.
Right.
We'll figure out how to get there together. But where you want to go, that's sort of up to you. So sometimes I'll talk about therapy and say, it's like we're driving a car. You're driving and I'm holding the map. And I say, where do you want to go? I want to go to Disneyland. Fantastic. There's 10 different ways we can get there. Which way sounds good? And then we collaborate and get there together.
Right.
But the what needs to come from the person. But that doesn't mean that you have to know, because sometimes where we start isn't where we end off. So someone might come in for these symptoms and address the symptoms, but then we say, here's the root cause. Here's what's really going on. And here's where we can make some really significant lasting change by addressing those root causes.
Right. Now, also wanted to talk about, so if we're experiencing some that we hear a lot, like I think too, when people are seeking out specific diagnosis too, I think because, I mean, the catch-22 of creating more awareness about something is then things sort of become catchphrases. So we think we maybe need a diagnosis because we've seen all these words online.
Mm-hmm.
Another one of those big online words that pops up all the time is self-care.
Yeah.
And I think that runs an interesting gamut for people about like what actually self-care is.
Yeah. To me, I work on this with many of my own clients as well, where I'll say, have you heard the term self-care? Oh, yeah, I do self-care. Oh, tell me about what you do for self-care.
Yeah.
And often the self-care that people describe is more avoidance or distraction as opposed to true self-care. So the way that I define self-care within my work is to say, when I do something that after I've completed it, I feel better. I feel recharged. I feel energized. I feel better having done it than not done it. So maybe that's going for a walk. Maybe that's connecting with a loved one on the phone. Maybe that's making a really nice meal for myself. Maybe it's, some weightlifting. What are those things that after I'm like, I feel more energy and I feel better that I did that, as opposed to more of a distraction saying, I binge watched Game of Thrones for the fourth time. That's more distraction because you're not actually adding anything. You're just getting out of your head. You're getting out of what you're feeling, but it comes right back. But when we do things that actually elevate, our endorphins and whatnot, then we feel better after it. So I think that's the real difference. So when we think about self-care, we really think about, what am I going to feel better after doing it? And that usually means it's a bit more work. It takes a bit more effort to get there. And sometimes I'll describe it as pushing a stalled car. The first few pushes are really tough to get it going, but once it's moving, it's a little bit easier to kind of keep that momentum and keep it going. So knowing that this is going to be hard, but I know that once I'm getting there and it's moving, it's going to be better for me.
Yeah. What are some, what are some things or is there a resource where people could, if they were sort of struggling with, okay, what is my self-care versus my distraction? What are some other ideas? Because sometimes I think we think, some people could come up with 1,000 ideas of what that looks, and other people have no idea. So just in case there's anybody that's like, I'm not sure what I could do for self-care for myself, where do you begin with that?
Usually I would ask them and say, if you were feeling better, if you were feeling strong, if you were feeling mentally healthy, what would you be doing differently in those times for yourself? So it was like, like when I'm really in a good place, I'm connecting with family more. I'm having dinner parties. I'm out and about more often. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm hearing socializing is important there, right? So again, what's that root piece there, and connecting with community and whatnot. So how can we start to get you more connected with community, whatever that looks like for you, and socializing more. So sometimes it is about doing some reflection inwardly and thinking about, when I am in a good place, what's different?
Yeah.
And then how do I start to amplify? And even one step is better than no step. And I think we really get into a society where we're all or nothing. And I am guilty of this, where, oh, well, I'm going to go to the gym 5 days a week for 2 hours a day, and I missed Monday. Forget it. I'm just going to eat pizza for the rest of the week and throw in the towel. But having 4 workouts is still better than no workouts, right? So it is about, like, every piece helps us. And when we look at trying to raise up and move along that continuum to mental wellness, I often say it's like a mountain. When I was a kid, I thought Mount Everest was one straight peak, straight up all the way to the top, but it's peaks and valleys. So we have to remember that each time we climb up, there's going to be maybe a bit of a valley, but that doesn't mean we failed. We're not back to where we started. So it's going to go up and down and up and down. But as long as we're moving in that trajectory forward, that's really what matters. And to continue going at it, and to know that not every day's perfect, nor would we want it to be. If we only knew happiness and joy, would we ever really appreciate it? Because it would just be our sort of, homeostatic everyday expression. Without low, we don't experience high, and vice versa. So there is highs and lows, but as long as we're moving forward, that's what we want to focus on.
Well, and I think we say it again really loud for the overthinkers in the back, myself being in that row for sure, is that, some of this stuff could just be tried. You don't have to, like, if you're like, I wonder if I went snowshoeing, if that would be a cool self-care thing that would make me feel better.
Yeah.
You don't have to think like, well, then I have to snowshoe this many times a week, or just go once. If you like it, you'll go again. If you don't. Like, nothing, like, quit making it to be something so much bigger.
Yeah. And to check in with yourself after and reflect on it. So at our clinics, for example, we use what we call a session rating scale and an outcome rating scale. So every time someone comes in, they rate themselves in 4 different domains and we look at it over time on a graph. So, like, are things improving or are things deteriorating? Because in our work, it really is, we got to try it and maybe it'll work. And if it doesn't work, that's just as good information for us to know, so that we change directions and to try something different. Because it really is that trial and error to see, like, is this working? Because for some people, a cognitive behavioral therapy approach might work perfectly. For other people, it's maybe more solution-focused therapy. For other people, it's a narrative therapy. But it's about what's going to work for the person. And that's really what matters. So I loved how you put that, because it is, I'm going to try snowshoeing, and then I'm going to see, how did I feel after? Did I enjoy it? Did I feel better having done that? Was it something that was terrible? Do I never want to go snowshoeing again? Yeah, exactly. All good information for us to inform, what am I going to do next?
Yeah. Well, and I think we live in a world where it's amazing. It could be like the good and the bad in the same thing, is that we love other people's recommendations, right? We love to know, like, hey, give me a rave on this, or looking for recommendations on that. And we love to get other people's recommendations on things. But when it comes to your own health, somebody else's recommendation may not be what's best for you. Like, you have to figure out you.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is so key, because, when we go to the ice cream shop, why are there so many flavors? Because to me, it's perfect. And sometimes I'll tease I'm a huge Nutella nut. So I'll say, you can't be everything to everyone. You're not Nutella. And then, of course, that gets a good laugh. But it's true that, like, everybody has something different. And what's going to work for me isn't necessarily going to work for you. It doesn't mean that it would be detrimental for you to try snowshoeing, even though I think it's fantastic. But it may not be, it's just not for me. I'd prefer to go downhill skiing. Fantastic. Go do that. That sounds great.
Ugh, really doesn't. No. But it might work for someone else. I get that. No, it's really good. And the other thing I was trying to remember the exact context to get you to say it again. That's the hard thing of when you interview someone a second time.
Right.
So, like, but I loved it when you said this. And I don't remember what we were talking about, Alex, but my favorite line from you that I've been quoting, and I sometimes give you credit and I sometimes don't. Is
No
you said,
problem.
just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy.
Yeah.
Like that one, that when you said that, I was just like, holy F word. Yeah. Yeah.
It's something that stuck with me, and I learned from my brothers. So sometimes I'll give him credit, and sometimes I won't as well. But they're simple and there's easy, and they're not the same thing. And so we often know the simple things. And I'll say, like, if I want to lose some weight, I need to stop eating cheeseburgers. Simple, not always easy, because cheeseburgers are delicious. They're comfort food. There's a drive-through on the way home. I didn't bring lunch to work. So all these things make it hard to make that simple choice. But how do I make it easier? So if it's for me, the gym, what did I do to make it easier? Well, I make sure all my stuff is packed the night before, so I'm not having to wake up. I engaged a trainer so that I could get some motivation. So I looked at these things that, how do I make these simple steps easier for me? And everyone's different. And people often conflate those two things and say, oh, it's so simple, why don't you do it? Because it's not easy for me. But okay, so what's the barrier? What would make it easier? And how do we start to remove those things?
Yeah, I just love that, because I think that when something sounds simple, but it isn't easy for, we can be really hard on ourselves that, like, well, that's so simple. Why can't I do that? And then you spiral into a totally different place when you just really need to identify. Yeah. So I feel like that's tattoo worthy. Just I'm not going to get one because I'm afraid of tattoos, Alex, but like, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy, honestly.
Yeah, like, absolutely.
If you take nothing else from our combo today, I hope you take that, so that we're just giving ourselves so much more grace, much more grace.
Yeah, we really have high expectations on ourselves. And I think social media has contributed to that. Add that to smartphones. So not only is social media to show us all the things that we could be doing or should be doing or expect ourselves to do, but now also with smartphones, it's there in our pocket, in our hand all the time. It's no longer just something, I'm just going to go home and check Facebook on the laptop and get some updates or something. No, it's we're inundated with these things that we could or should be doing, as opposed to what do I want to be doing?
Yeah. No, I love that. And I appreciate so much your time to connect with us again. I think you're just going to have to be a regular character on the show and come back and do some fun check-ins with us from time to time.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Appreciate your expertise and your brilliance and your time today so much.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it as well.
All right. We're going to say a quick happy birthday to Angie. She's celebrating birthday, and she's like, if there's a coffee club without Angie, I would be surprised. So happy birthday, Angie. We hope you have an amazing day. Groundhog Day birthday. That's fun. We'll give you an update on Pekisco Pete as soon as we know. And Friday morning, we'll be back to chit chat. There's a really cool woman in a community who's rallied women together to celebrate what they call Galentines. So everybody gets put in a draw, and women buy each other Valentine's gifts just to celebrate women in their community. Kind of a cool concept. So we're going to learn about that on Friday morning. Alex, thank you. Cheers to you.
And to
Go
you.
Get your coffee now. You've earned it.
I will do. Yeah. The machine's staring at me.
All right. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.
Right,
and
thanks
have a great day, everybody.